right, welcome back. This is Earning Mileage, and it's been a few months since we did our last episode because we were writing a book this summer. The book is called Redesign Work, and it's about enabling a remote workforce to work on a results-oriented pattern. And it's about taking these concepts of project management into your 8 to 5 industrial standard workforce and sort of breaking out of the hourly grind and moving into instead something that's more meaningful and something that's more likely to get results from your employees. So as we're promoting the book, as we're talking about the book, as we're working with companies, with clients right now on their remote workforce engagement strategies, we've decided to restart Earning Mileage with a series of ideas that we think come directly out of this approach that we're taking to management. And today's episode is Say Yes. And the idea here is that your employees are asking for exceptions all over the place. They're asking for adjustments. They want you to bend the rules. And our suggestion is that you say yes. Just say yes. It's not that hard. You can absolutely make an exception to the rule. You can absolutely rewrite the policy. You can get rid of the policy altogether. You can just say yes. And the story that I told Jody that kind of got us thinking about this was when I was 9 months pregnant with my daughter. It was May, and I was wearing flip-flops and to work because my feet would not fit in any other kind of shoe. And one of the employees that worked nearby, who liked to complain about my wardrobe a good bit, reported me to Human Resources for a dress code violation. And my manager went in my defense to the Human Resources department and said, "She's 9 months pregnant. Just the fact that she's here is what matters, you know." And Human Resources said I was not allowed to wear flip-flops to work because if they let me do it, they'd have to let everybody do it. And my manager called bullshit on that and told me I could wear whatever I wanted and she would pay whatever she had to for it. But here's the thing, this phrase, if we do this for you, we have to do it for everyone, is a total lie. It's total garbage. This is not a real thing, right? This is just companies or human resources or school districts that are saying they don't want to make exceptions. They don't want to consider an exception. They don't want to create a unique environment for each individual contributor. And I honestly, I just call bullshit on it. What do you think, Jody? Because I've been monologuing.
One of the things that I love about, whenever I had, because it was always either HR or, above me chain of command that would say, if you make this exception for that person, you're going to have to make it for all of them. And what I always thought was, when is this exact situation going to duplicate? And so I would look to your, I imagine at the time, cubicle neighbor and say, are you planning on being 9 months pregnant? When you are, you can wear flip-flops. Congratulations. That is the exact time that yes will apply to you also. And so I'm like, we have to look at these situations that our employees are coming to us and realize that the chances are this is a unique situation with a unique individual, and we've not been able to problem solve it any other way, so the exception is going to have to be made. And I think another part of it is we can policy ourselves to death. And I believe that all these standard operating procedures, and here's the policy for this, and here's the policy for that. What it actually means is that, a piece of drywall could then manage an office or a team or whatever. Because if all you have is a bunch of policies and you don't have anyone ever thinking of, how do I actually say yes? How do I work with these people and not just have them work for me? You might as well just be a standing operating procedure manual that your employees can reference, and then the company can save the thousands of dollars that they're paying you every year in order to manage these people. I find policies lazy.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I think you're onto something because you're talking about policy removing the managerial uncertainty, right? Like it takes out the possibility that I have to then make a choice or a value judgment on things. And I understand why we do it, right? We do it because we want to make sure that everybody is equal and everything is fair and we're not playing politics and we're not playing favorites, right? But what ends up actually happening is that we're getting the lowest common denominator, right? We're
Yeah.
getting a stupid policy like you can't wear flip-flops that applies to absolutely everybody,
Yeah.
even if it's not relevant to everybody. There wasn't a man in my office that was going to walk in with flip-flops on, right? So this is not even a policy that applies to him. Okay. So, but we have this lowest common denominator scenario now instead of what we really want, which is equity. We want to be able to look at our employees as individual contributors with their own strengths, their own talents, and something to offer our organization. And if we're doing that, if we're looking at everybody and their experience and asking them how we can better enable them to contribute to the organization, how can we enable them to be a valuable part of what we're trying to do here, then we're saying yes to everything, right? Say yes. Tell them
Yeah.
yes. What do I have to do to make working here in this environment better for you? And I also think the other thing you mentioned that is really key here is that managers think they're managing people. And so they use policy to sort of corral them like bumpers on a bowling alley, right? But you don't have to manage your people. They're individuals. They have the liberty to manage themselves. They can legitimately get up and walk out the door anytime they want, right? You need to
Yeah.
manage the work. And managing the work has nothing to do with policy. The
Okay.
work itself has nothing to do with that.
One of the things, there was kind of a series of questions when I worked for an over policyed organization. There was a series of questions that I would ask myself when an employee came to me requesting an exception to their work schedule, to their workload, whatever it is. I would ask myself, first of all, is what they are asking for, is it legal? In that, if I allow this exception, am I or this organization going to get sued? If the answer was, yeah, it's legal, go ahead. Then I was like, yay. And then I would have to ask myself the most important question, which it was, if I say yes, is someone, namely a child, because it was a child care service, big organization, is someone, namely a child, going to be injured or killed as a result of this yes? If the answer was no, the employee got the yes. And we would just figure it out. Because I also thought, well, you know what? Life is so flippin' hard without constantly being beaten down at work. Like, we just don't need that. Like, I was like, this is too stressful. And no, if we can work it out, and hey, guess what? If that means the rest of the team has to work a little harder that week because we're allowing this person to go be with her family at a time that she needs to go be with her family, well, then guess what? We're going to suck it up and do it. And the way I was able to get away with this, because believe me, my upper chain of command was like, Jody, you're a doormat. You're letting them walk all over you. The way I was able to do this was every single Friday at staff meeting, I would hammer the fact that we are there for each other, that this wasn't just a come in, punch the clock, do your data entry, and then you better take your 15-minute break in the morning and your hour or 30 minutes for lunch, and here's all the union standards and all that kind of stuff. I was like, no, we're going to sit here and we're going to vent, and we're going to support, and we're going to give a shit about each other. Yeah, it came out of a need to have that in my life because I had it before. I knew what it felt like to have a boss, and now this particular woman is like my life mentor. My life changed when I met the person who finally said, this is what actual professional support and guidance looks like. And we didn't have any written policies, now that I think about it, other than the organization handbook that basically says, I promise I'll be a good person and like show up to work. And if not, I'm not going to be there, I'll tell somebody. Like that was pretty much the whole, and I'm not going to lie to the press about us. That was the whole handbook right there. But in our own department, we had no written policies. We had practices that worked. Mm-hmm. And we expected each other to follow the practices that worked. And when we came across a situation that the practice didn't work, then we were expected to problem solve, to come up with a solution. And a lot of times people, they don't see an exception as a solution. They just see the exception. They never see the solution part of it.
Yeah, so I think you're hitting on some really important things here too. The first is this idea that the exception is not they don't think of it as a solution, it's another problem, right?
Yeah.
And so if we become married to the policies, become married to the infrastructure that we've created, this handbook or this is how we do things or whatever, we don't innovate, we don't change. If every time something comes up and you're forced to think it through again, you're now making choices that are relevant to the experience you're currently having. Last year at this time, the choices that you were making as a business owner related to whether or not people could work from home were very much driven by, I don't even know, honestly, quite frankly, I don't know how people made that decision, because we've always been like, just work from anywhere, it's going to be great. But so that decision making a year ago, very different than now, right? COVID put everybody in a position where they had to rethink everything. And honestly, people are tired of it, right? They don't want to have to work that hard. There are people who just want to go back to the way things were. Honestly, I don't understand those people either. We have an opportunity now to redo everything. Why would we lose that opportunity? Why would you just give that away, right? But COVID said to the business owners, you have to make different choices here. You have to treat your employees in a different way. People had kids at home. They had health concerns. They had limitations as far as internet was concerned. My own internet is kind of laggy right now as you and I are talking on it. We had all these sorts of things that we weren't having to deal with before, and now we have to deal with them. And as managers, we actually could do a really great job here. If you're a good manager and you've been managing the work, your people are like, man, I'm still going to get my work done, no problem. But if you're I was going to say a shitty manager, but people probably don't self-proclaim that. But if you're one of these managers who is a little bit more focused on policy and practice and procedure than you were on human interaction and innovation, then you probably really struggled when all these decisions started popping up because you weren't trained to make those choices.
Yeah.
Your organization safeguarded people from your choices.
I look at it as, if you look at the restaurant industry, you can basically take all restaurants and put them into one of two categories. You have your corporate franchised restaurants, and then you have your mom and pop, your individually, chef-owned restaurant, things like that. Now, all of these big-time corporate chains, their customer base walks in to, say a Chili's anywhere in the country, and they are going to expect the same exact flavors, presentation, experience, everything. And that's what they're looking for. They're looking for familiarity. And so those people, great. Do what you got to do.
Policy the hell out of that.
you go work for, like, let's say the DMV, that their customer base needs to know what to expect every single time. And please don't come up with all these new policies that government agencies seem to love to do, because then I'm going to get confused and frustrated. But then we have the restaurants that I more frequently visited prior to COVID and now get takeout delivered from them. The menu changes. The ingredients are all extremely fresh, farm to table, things like that. And so the flavor is not going to be exact every single time. the presentation is not going to be exact every single time, because at one point, in one dish, that chicken breast could be an oval, and in the other, the next dish, that chicken breast might have a different shape just because it was a different chicken. And that's okay, because the quality is always there. But so I think we have to ask ourselves, really, what do we want out of our work environment? If you want the same thing every day, I don't really want to think about it, I just want to work and earn a paycheck, fine, you go be you. But I think what COVID has proven is that there are a whole bunch of us who are like, wait a second, there's a place that I could be creative, and I could be innovative, and I could actually be excited about work, because I don't know exactly what's going to happen all the time. And now you're telling me that if you want to work in that coffee shop that just reopened because they have Wi-Fi and your favorite latte, go work from there today. I don't care where you work, just get it done. That's what makes me excited. I never wanted to be a data entry clerk.
Well, I like the idea that you bring up with the restaurants of the variation, right? So when we think about policy as being something that creates consistency, there is a way for things to be consistent in your customer experience, in your user experience, right? There is a way for that to be the way things are done, right?
Yeah,
I don't know how often you
still
use
have quality control.
Yeah. Well, so I don't know how often you use PayPal, but I just logged in this week on PayPal and the interface has changed.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit kind of off, but like I had to figure out where to find the things I was looking for, but it didn't take me very long to adjust. And right now we're living in a society where people do that with software all the time, right? You open up the Facebook app, it looks different than it did yesterday, right? I mean, the software designers, software designers are teaching us to be open to variation. They're teaching us to be accepting of these kinds of changes and these kinds of disruptions in our regular life. So the idea that we need consistency or that we need everything to be exactly the same day in and day out, I think that's extremely archaic. And if you're in a managerial position and you have the authority to allow those derivations, those deviations, those the inconsistencies, if you can bring in that kind of variation in your environment, I would encourage you to do so. Say yes. Tell the people when they ask for help that you're going to give it to them.
I think the other, another kind of theory that, or idea that managers need to consider when it comes to saying yes, is what that yes, what consistently saying yes will actually reveal, will lead to, is, first of all, your employees will actually have faith in the organization that they work for, in the person that they work for, who they're doing this work for. And to have faith in the people that control your work life, I think is hugely underestimated. The second thing is that managers, if your let's say you're the top person, you're the CEO, and you tell your managers, you better figure out a way to say yes to your employees. That's what you need to do today. One of the things that those managers will have to do is they will have to examine their own personal bias, because if they are not aware of their own personal bias, if they are favoring one person over the other, because that one person, she's hilarious and I love her and oh my God, she's just the greatest. And that other person, gets her work done and she's really reliable, but man, she is cold to be around, like no personality. And we have all met those people. We know those people who are extremely reliable, but you're like, I don't know how to speak to her. You can't treat, when it comes to saying yes, you can't treat your buddy better than you do the woman who you're like, I don't know how to say hey to her without her looking at me like I'm crazy.
So I think the key then is to how do you do it, right? Like, and I think it's about asking yourself these questions, right? So you had your series of questions, will anybody die? But I think we can get a little bit maybe less hyperbolic with this. The questions are things like, who's going to be affected by this choice, right? How will these people be affected by this choice, right? What is the effect on our productivity going to be? Is it going to push our deadlines back? Is it going to keep us from being able to meet our obligations? And how far into this butterfly effect can we really predict, right?
Yeah.
And as a manager, you have the experience of knowing, when things get done on time, we all have, these results, right? Or
Yeah.
when they fall behind, we struggle in these particular ways. And it's about leveraging that experience and thinking through what these exceptions, right, what these asks are really going to do to you. And so I think creating for yourself as a manager a list of, here's how I'm going to investigate each of these asks. And the more you do it, the faster it'll come, right? The more I want to say yes. What are the things that are going to prevent me from saying yes? And if nothing is here to prevent the yes, just say yes, right? It's so much easier.
And then this is going to lead into a future topic that we're going to talk about. One of the ways that we can actually say yes more often is if we're worrying more about managing the work and not managing people. Because if we have a good grasp on a project and we have that project completely broken down in every single little thing that needs to be done, well, then if one person needs a yes, you know what those butterfly effects are, because you know what their responsibilities are within each project, and then you know what needs to be delayed, reassigned, postponed, whatever you need to do to still get that project done on time. You'll actually have a basis to look at. So
I want to close with one other example of just a complete absurdity as far as policy is concerned. Over the summer, when parents were making choices about which type of schooling they were going to send their kids back to, we heard a story of somebody nearby that wanted to, they committed to an on-site back to school for their kids. Well, then they found out that their grandfather had stage 4 lung cancer, and so he was immunocompromised, and they wanted to change their condition, like, hey, we don't want to go back on campus, we want to be remote when school starts. And the school district said, if we make an exception for you, we have to make an exception for everyone. And this kind of stuff, these phrases like that are about the system, they're about the policy, they're about equality, which gets us to the lowest common denominator. It's archaic, and we don't need to be operating in that environment anymore. Yeah. There's just no reason to be living that way anymore. And I think that as business leaders, we have a chance to break out and to do better. And this is our opportunity to do that. And I would encourage our viewers and our listeners to be courageous about it and just say yes. Say yes. Yeah. All right, that's been Earning Mileage. Thanks, Jody, for being here. Thanks for being part of this. More episodes to come. The next one will be about itemizing that work, knowing exactly what it takes. Manage the work, not the people. Tune back in. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.